Esau and Jacob now have been kind of reunited. But there are some funny things that go on, because now Jacob says, I'll go back to you to Seir. And remember, Mount Seir is the place that God gave to the Edomites and to Esau. It was the place where Edom existed. It was the place when Israel was camping around the 40 years, and when they finally went through, God had commanded them not to basically kill the people of Esau, or the people of Edom. And he promises that, and it seems like in a turn of his hand, he goes, once his brother goes one way, he goes the other direction, doesn't it? Because he's going back up towards, if you picture the map of the Promised Land, and you picture the two great bodies of water, the Dead Sea and the Sea of Capernaum up there, and you see the Jordan River coming down, and of course the Dead Sea has no outlet, it just sits there and evaporates there. But Esau and Jacob are on the east side of the river at this point, and Esau, and they're meeting kind of halfway, and now Esau is going back down to Mount Seir, while Jacob, who said he would meet his brother at Mount Seir, but Esau wanted to accompany him to the Promised Land, says, no, my cattle is going to be, I can't keep up with you. And so he gets his brother to leave him and go back to Mount Seir, while he goes up to, guess what, Shechem, and he goes up to Sukkoth, and they stay there a while, and he builds a house at Sukkoth, and he stays and carries probably on a business, and they move to Shechem, and Shechem is a big city. Now there are some people that believe there's all sorts of reasons why he did this. Maybe it's because he's back at deceiving again. I think what is in his mind is that when he goes to Sukkoth, it's a fertile pasture. And it's a great place for his livestock and his wealth to be built up and strengthened, because it's a great place for grazing. Now, the mountains are not a great place to graze, are they? You don't take your herd and your cattle to be on the side of the mountain, do you? Because there's not much foliage, there's not much grass, there's not much food for the animals to graze. And then for some unknown reason, he goes from Sukkoth to Shechem, which is a city, which is a bigger city in the land of Canaan. And it sets the stage for another event that happened. But before we go to that event, remember, all of this is happening to set up in some way the situation with Dinah and the men, or basically a man by the name of Shechem, who was probably part of royalty, or at least his father was part of royalty in that place. And he goes to Shechem, and it's setting up, and it shows that Jacob here is looking for safety. Jacob wants safety more than anything else, and so instead of honoring what he said to his brother and going down to Mount Seir, he goes up to a place where he knows he can be safe. He knows that his cattle and herds can be taken care of, and safety is a high value for Jacob. He would rather deceive someone and be safe than to tell the truth and be vulnerable, I believe. But he goes up, and remember, Jacob vowed to return to Bethel, didn't he? Before he went to his brother Laban, or his uncle Laban. He had vowed to return, and God, revealing himself while he was in the land of Laban, or the land of Paddan-aram, comes back down. He says to Jacob, I am the God of Bethel, reminding Jacob of his promise to return to Bethel, where he would pay 1/10 of all that he had. Some commentators will say that maybe Jacob is actually running from going to Bethel because he doesn't want to give 1/10 of his wealth at this time. I don't know the real situation of that, but I can tell you that I believe that he's seeking safety. He's been with Laban, he's been with his brother, and now since all those things are done, he feels safe, and he goes to a place called Sukkoth, and he goes to a place called Shechem, thinking that he is safe. We all want safety. We all want to be safe. And my contention is that Jacob didn't understand that the safest place to be is in the will of God. See, we think that sometimes we can create the safety in our lives. A couple years ago, someone did a study about the safest place to live where natural disasters wouldn't occur. You know where that is? Nowhere. Actually, they found a place where the least probability of natural, it's in a place where no one would want to live. Because there's no jobs, there's nothing they could do there. It is in the middle, I think, of Kansas, in the middle of a wheat field, that they said the probability of anything like flooding, rain, earthquake, tornadoes, anything, nothing would happen here. Maybe it wasn't Kansas to Colorado. I can't remember actually where that was. But we tend to want safety, but we all live with risk. We all can't orchestrate our own safety. I don't care how much insurance we have. I don't care how much investing we do. We can't guarantee safety. I was having a conversation with someone this week back in Texas, and one of the things that I said to him, the safest place in ministry is to understand the goodness of God's sovereignty. Because if I think that I am going to achieve something for God, that will puff me up. That will make me proud. That will give me a big head, so to speak. But the safest place for a minister of God is to trust in his own, not his own sovereignty, but in the sovereignty and the control of God over the events of his life. So there's a complacency of safety. And secondly, there's a complacency of what we call self-preservation. Jacob and his family have moved now close to a city. And it reminds me of how Lot moved closer and closer to what? Sodom and Gomorrah, until he became a citizen. Cities in the Bible aren't really painted as very good, are they? You look like every time people gather in a city, guess what happens? Sin, fallenness. And before we are critical of Jacob this evening, let me say one thing about Jacob's life and our lives. We look at Jacob and we see a man that may be a man that's geared towards safety or self-preservation, but we all do the same thing. And even when we minister for the cause of Jesus Christ, we all do that in a way that's tainted with sin. You and I, when we minister and have the motivation to share the gospel and to preach the gospel or to care for people that are hurting or rejoice with people who are rejoicing, whatever we do that in a way that's not perfect. But God accepts it because we do it out of faith. In other words, when we do ministry, we don't do ministry, and God looks down on our ministry and says, hey, that earns points with me. We don't earn points with God. From the greatest preacher to the humblest servant, they're all the same with God. And so each servant of God, each preacher of God, each minister of God, which is all of us, we're all ministers in some sense, in some ways. We all serve God in a way that is imperfect, but God wants us to serve Him in a way because of what Jesus Christ has done on the cross. He has died for sinners like us, that we may glorify God in the way we live. But we all do that in an imperfect way. It's easy to criticize Jacob. Jacob, you're just a selfish person. And so Jacob moves his family down. He moves his family down to a place called Shechem. And basically it says in verse 1 of verse 34, chapter 34, it says, Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had born to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. In other words, this was a constant thing she was doing. It wasn't a one-time event. She was constantly going out, and she was talking and having a good time with the women of the land. And it says, and when Shechem, the son of Hamor, Now, if you look back up in verse 18, when Jacob bought a piece of land in Shechem. He bought it from who? Hamor, Shechem's father. And it probably would be a place and a relationship he would regret the rest of his life. Because look what happened. It says when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. In verse 4, so Shechem spoke to his father, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife." And the story goes on, basically, as they make a deal for the marriage between Shechem and Dinah. Because he loves this woman. And he may make a deal saying, listen, we'll let you intermarry with us, we'll do all of these things for you so that you can also carry on business, you can intermarry, and we can be one people, we can be part of each other's family. The brothers, in verse 13, or the sons, not the brother of Dinah, which is interesting, but the sons of Jacob. I think that's significant, because they've learned from their father. Put one condition on the men of Shechem, and that one condition is they be circumcised. The men of Shechem said, hey, that's no problem, because we're going to gain financially from this. We're going to see our preservation enhanced. We're going to be more comfortable with life. We're going to do this is easy pickings. And if you read in verse 25, it says, on the third day when they were sore, you kind of become sore when you are circumcised. It says when they were sore, the two sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure, and killed all the males. Verse 26. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys and whatever was in the city and in the field, and all the wealth and all the little ones and their wives and all that was in the houses, and they captured and plundered. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household. But they, the sons of Jacob, said, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? I want you to notice something. After Jacob had solved his problem with Esau, he kind of gets lazy. He really doesn't say anything about the issue with Dinah. He doesn't really get upset with it. It's the sons that get upset with it. Jacob doesn't confront the issue. He doesn't do anything. He just sits in the background and says, okay, sons, go after it, make a deal, whatever it is, that's fine. Jacob's sons, while their desire might be noble to defend their sister, have murderous intentions in their heart. They want revenge. Revenge is never good. The Bible says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And if you'll know, when did Jacob rebuke the brothers? Right after they murdered? You'll notice that two of the brothers committed the murder and the rest of the brothers committed the pillaging. The taking of goods, the taking of wives, the taking of cattle.